Hi everyone, welcome back. So we're going to start talking. So we've built our back, we've got it modeled out, and now we're going to talk about how we're going to get the leg to come out. So it's kind of a weird way to do it. Imagine it's already in here like this, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a sketch on the back of our back piece, so the back here, and we're going to sketch a rectangle that's the width of the back, but the thickness of the material, and then we're going to, then we're going to grab that little rectangle we drew and we're going to extrude it out to make a leg. So it's a really weird way to make this leg. Normally we think about making it from top down and pulling it out, but this time we're going to actually pull it out the whole length. So let's get to it. Now I found that 2 centimeters from the bottom to here is a really good distance for the leg to sit. I'm going to use that, but if you want to use a different value, that's fine. You can use a higher or lower value. If you make it smaller than 2 centimeters, it just makes your leg have to be shorter. If you make it higher up, it makes your leg have to be longer. So it just depends on how you want your leg. This is pretty good for me. Whatever you choose here though, make sure you write it down somewhere, because you need this distance here to here to be exactly the same as this distance for this slot. Otherwise your stand will sit at weird angles for you. All right, so let's do this. So I'm going to sketch that rectangle on the back of my face. Now I know this is the back because notice the shadow here. So it's tipping backwards like this. So I'm going to go on the back side of it. And I'm going to click Create Sketch. I'm going to create it on this back plane. It's going to rotate me there. And I want to create the rectangle 2 centimeters up. So I need a construction line to help me find that location. So I'm going to click on the construction line. And I'm just going to make any random line right across 90 degrees. Notice it starts out orange. That means it's not defined. It can still move around. It's not defined where it's supposed to be. So I'm going to hit Escape to get out of the tool. I'm going to use the D for dimensioning tool, or I can come up here and click on Sketch Dimension, right? But I'm going to use this tool. I'm going to click on my construction line, and I'm going to click on the bottom of my model. And I'm going to click over here. Notice it's at 3.4 centimeters right now. I wanted it 2 centimeters. Hit enter. That's going to line me up now. Now I'm ready to rock and roll. So I'm going to grab a rectangle tool and I'm going to use a center rectangle. And I'm going to come down here and find the middle. So I'm on the black line and now I'm going to keep going until I see the triangle. Boom, right there. So now if I click, I'm going to start drawing a rectangle centered right there on that. And I notice that my rectangle is dashed lines, so I want to turn my construction lines off. And then I'm going to come over here. Now this is where things get a little interesting. I want this rectangle, because this is what I'm going to extrude my leg out of, to have the height here of the thickness of the material. So instead of remembering that number the whole time, I'm just going to type in thickness. Awesome. And I want the width of the rectangle to be the full width of the back. So instead of figuring out what that number is and remembering it, I'm going to come over here, I'm going to hit tab, and then I'm just going to type in back. And I'm going to choose the width one. And I'm all good. And I'm going to hit enter. And now I'm going to extrude this. So yeah, this is the weird, and this is the end of the weird part. So I'm going to hit E for extrude. It's going to ask me what I want to extrude, and I'm going to choose this little rectangle right here. And now I'm going to try to extrude it. I want to tip my model so I can see the shadow. See, if I go like at this angle, I can't see the shadow. I want to tip it so I can just barely see the shadow. And what I'm going to do is extrude out the leg. And see how that shadow tells you where the ground is. So I'm going to rotate so I can see it. Notice if I go really far, what happens is that now the shadow, like the back is above the shadow, which means my leg is too long. It's going beyond where I want it to go. So I'm going to back it up a little bit. And I'm going to go until just the shadow just barely touches the back and, whoops, the leg. So maybe a little bit more. Oh, there, just like that. See how the shadow now is touching both? That means they're both kind of on the same plane. Now, it doesn't need to be perfect. If it's off by a smidge, that's fine. It'll just tip another degree or two differently than what you thought it would. All right. So that is that. That's that side of the leg. Now we need, so that's from the back this way, but we need the leg to come forward as well. And I found, so what I'm going to do is do a two-sided extrude. I extruded backwards already, and that's a one-sided extrude. Now I'm going to do a two-sided extrude. So this first one's the one I've already done. I'm going to click over here and look at the second arrow I get. I'm going to grab it and pull it forward. And I found that about 1.5 centimeters is pretty good. If you've got a really thick phone case and you need more of a tab than this, you need a wider spot here, you can do a little bit more, a little bit less. But remember that, remember that number 2. Whatever you use here, you're going to want, so this tab, you're going to want to be the same length as this one. That'll help you just balance out your phone stand. Okay, now I'm going to click. Now, before I click OK, notice what it thinks it wants to do. It's taking a guess and it says, hey, I think you want to cut the material. So if I say OK right now, all it's going to do is this red part's going to disappear and it's going to slice my back into 2 pieces. And that's problematic. So because I'm making 2 separate pieces that I don't want to ever have merged together, they just kind of slide together, I'm going to create a new component. So down here, instead of cut, if I do join, it's going to fuse them together as one piece. If I do intersect, it's going to do this weird thing of taking the thing that, don't worry about that yet. We'll do that later. I don't want to do new body, I'm going to do new component. So what a new component will do is it'll keep them as 2 separate things. I'm going to click OK. So now I have a new component. Notice over here, I have a component 1. And if I click this to hide it, I'm going to click the eyeball and that will hide it. So it turned it off and now it's on, off, on. Notice that this component refers to the leg. So I'm going to click on this component over here and I'm going to call this leg because I want to start staying organized. Now we haven't really taken much time to look at this tree over here. Let's take a look at it. So bodies are things that you make. They are like a level lower than a component. So a body is really 2 things that are kind of together to make a bigger thing. So if you think of our Lego piece, right? We drew the Lego and then we drew another body on top of it, which is the nub, but these bodies all kind of go together. They're one thing. We'll use components when we want to divide things out more, have 2 separate pieces of stuff. So if I click on the body, I click on the down arrow here, notice I have body 1. And when I click on it, it shows me what that body is. So this really is my back. So what I want to do is I want to convert this body into a component. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to right click on the body and I'm going to say create component from bodies. And I'm going to click on that. And now I have a component 2. So I have a component 1 and a component 2. Notice component 2 is the back. I'm going to rename that to back. Okay, now I have 2 separate components here that I can mess with. Everything is happy. I also have a sketches folder. And these are all the sketches that I've drawn over time in here. And we can do things with those. We're not going to do anything with those today, but we will soon. And then the construction ones is that's that construction plane I made. So later on, if I like, hey, you know what, I want to tip this thing more to like 20 degrees or 15 degrees instead of 20, I can actually go change that. That's going to have some effect on the rest of my model, so I'm not going to do that. All right. Now let's see what's next. Leg, back, everything is super happy at this point. All right. So now we have this problem. Let me show you what the problem is if you look here, we've got this piece of material traveling through this solid piece of material. They're both solid. Watch this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move the leg by using the M for move. I'm going to click on the thing I want to move. And then I'm going to grab one of these arrows and I'm just going to slide it back. Notice how they're both solid and they're both inside of each other. Like that's problematic. You can't do that in reality. So we need to fix that next. So I'm going to escape out of this tool, which will put it right back where it was. So if you ever use the move tool and you want to undo your move, you can just escape out of it before you push enter and it'll put it back where it was. All right, so what we're going to do first is we're going to take our leg and we're going to cut in this shape, which is what goes into this part here. So let's do that next. to do that, I'm going to create a sketch. Actually, let's hold off on that. So in our next video, we'll talk about how to create the leg and then how to do everything else. So we'll see in a few minutes.